impact at the Museum of Kansas City. And I'm so excited about the conversation that we'll be having today. But just to give you a little bit of context, this is part of our Restore KC program. Restore KC was a virtual program that started here at the Museum of Kansas City during the pandemic. And the idea was, like many institutions, was to still keep the community engaged, even though we weren't able to meet in person. And so we had so many great guests and so many great topics were explored during that time in terms of ways to build community, ways to confront racism, ways to really talk about restorative practices, which is our guiding star here at the Kansas City Museum. We thought it might be cool to bring it back. And so we started off back in February during Black History Month. And we have another celebration this month. This is National Poetry Month. And we thought, who better to have as our guest for this episode of Restore KC than Kansas City's inaugural poet laureate, Melissa Ferrer Seville. So let me tell you a little bit about Melissa. She is a poet, a performer, an organizer, an educator. She received a bachelor's degree in both creative writing and Italian from Florida State University. She has also received a master's of education degree with a specialization in urban education from Park University. Melissa received her MFA in creative writing from Randolph College. She was also longlisted for the Palette Poetry 2021 Emerging Poet Prize. She is a Charlotte Street Studio resident, a Chrysalis Institute alumnus, and a Heartland Arts KC Fellow. Rooted in the practical and the possible, her spoken word poems and songs are mostly responses to the world around her and her own internal journey. Melissa is the founder of the arts and organizing event series A Nation in Exile. So, without further ado, I bring you Melissa Ferrer Seville.
Hi.
Hey,
How you doing?
good, Melissa. Why don't we kick things off with one of your incredible poems?
For sure. I think when deciding what poem I wanted to introduce myself on, given the topic and everything, let's be real. I like to start things off with a bang. So I'm gonna do this poem. It's called For Khalifa. Back in September, a man was executed by the state of Missouri who was an innocent man, named Marcellus Khalifa Williams. And um, this poem is for him. He was an imam, a poet, a father. He had been in prison for a really long time, and for a crime he did not commit, and was on death row. And this is the and his death had been delayed, and this was the last time. And they decided to go through with it despite not having the evidence. So this is for Khalifa, but really it's for all of us. The name Khalifa means successor or ruler or leader. And how ready are we to relinquish authority to those who murder, steal, and pillage? How ready are we to vanquish ourselves for those who posture upon a pedestal raised above our heads? We crane our necks to those who block out the sun, bend our spines for those who reject the upright, lay supine in the mud to keep their feet clean. So pristine are they, who purify their hands with blood, who sow seeds of hunger and need while they remain filled to bursting. What is this cursing? This crooked step, this weaponized glance? A trance keeps us in sway to generate more energy for their play. How many minutes in a day can be turned into dollars? How can we bottle the air, ration the water, section the land, sell our daughters, martyr our sons, forget why we've come? Isn't this fun? The land of circus and cake. We dance on graves and call ourselves holy. We throw our hands in the air and say it's not our fault. We were not awake when it happened.
Wow. I remember the first time I heard you read that poem. It had just happened. Like, was it that day or the day before or a few
Yeah,
days
super.
before?
Yeah, I believe.
Yeah, so powerful, and so restore KC restorative practices is all about building community. It's about the pursuit of social justice, and so I just also wanted to mention that um, since I'm a poet, I am the poet in residence here at the Museum of Kansas City. We launched the Restorative Poetics Initiative last year. So this is part of the programming under that umbrella too. And the whole idea is to engage poets such as yourself that are not only writing about these really difficult topics, but who are also out here doing the work. And so thank you so much for that piece. So um, I wanted to start with how it's been being the poet laureate of Kansas City, the inaugural one. So how long have you been at it now?
A little over a year now since
Okay.
February. Yeah.
Okay. And so tell me, what has this journey been like?
It's interesting. At the beginning, everyone was like, "Yeah, so what are you gonna do as poet laureate?" And I was like, "Stuff and things." Like, what does a poet laureate do? Stuff and things. I don't know. Yeah, it's been really interesting because I'm not a big title person, to be real. Like it was when I got it, I was like very excited, and I was like, "Why am I so excited? It's just a title. I don't care about titles." But I realized over the past year what it means for me on a like spiritual and energetic level, on a like level of what I believe a poet is, and how it's like kind of like shaped the way I kind of, well, I wouldn't even say shape, but like kind of like magnified or added to the way that I participate,
Hmm.
Um, because I think um, it's I don't know. I'm an organizer too, and I feel like as a poet, and you know this, Glenn, like we're always like looking at the world and like seeing the what's not being said, right? Seeing the spaces in between that need to be filled or need to be brought out and like light shined upon. And I feel like as poet laureate, I do that for our city. I do that for like but I don't know. I feel like it's partially the poet, it's partially the organizer in me that makes me like nosy and in everybody's business and like
Hmm.
and wanting to know what's always happening in our city and all of these spaces that at least I'm interested in. I know that when I started the poet laureate position, I wanted to like kind of set precedent being the first one in Kansas City of like, oh, it's not enough to just be a poet. We have to be part of our community. We have to be doing things. Our poetry, the things we write about in our poetry has to walk off the page and into the streets, right? And so I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And then for a long time, I was like, what literary project am I going to do? You know what I mean? Because like, but a lot of poet laureates, they have these like community literary projects.
Hmm.
And I have a Nation in Exile, and I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. But like, I have a Nation in Exile, which is like an abolitionist arts and organizing event series. But then, like I'm always organizing, and I've started working with the Defender for our Black Radical Education program, and I started having this tension of like, okay, so I'm the poet laureate and I'm supposed to be doing like maybe like a bunch of school workshops and stuff like that, but also the world is on fire, and this is where and like my energy is like I need to be organizing with my
Right,
community.
right.
And I actually went to a poet laureate panel in LA for AWP.
Yeah, yeah.
The poet laureate of San Francisco is on that panel, who's a poet I love, Tongo Eisen Martin. Have you ever heard of him?
Incredible.
Oh my God. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah. His poetry makes your brain um twist and turn. Like it's very his imagery is beyond. There's no cliche, not one cliche
Literally
in
not a
any of his
single,
work.
everything
Yeah,
original, the original, right?
yeah.
So he was like a surprise on the panel because a person had dropped out. And I went because I was like, okay, if I'm at this conference, I need to do something practical with myself. And like, But I asked him, knowing that he's an organizer, and also the kind of responses he was given all night or all day in that panel was like, oh, speaking my language anyway. And I was like, so I've been really struggling with where to put my energy. You know, I know we're supposed to do these like literary projects and stuff like that. But I also feel the need to organize. I feel the call to organize. We're in a time right now that like so much is happening. And he goes, and I go, when you were a poet laureate, did you put a lot of energy into these literary projects, or did you spend most of your time organizing? And he said without a beat, I'm gonna say this. He said, always be an organizer first, because they're gonna be an imperialist first.
Wow.
And then he goes, sometimes for them you're just a horse and pony show, but for you, you're fighting for your life. And I think that to me has solidified like how I look at this poet laureate position, right? Because a lot of people do laureating in different ways, and I'm like, I just have to be real with it, right? Like, I'm a poet no matter where I'm at and whatever space I'm in. And if it's going to be something that's worthy of such a title as poet laureate, which by the way, it was Tongo who taught me that a poet laureate, it's the position started because poet laureates were like adopted by the royal family into their families, right? And so that's what made them laureate.
Yeah.
But like, if in like one, so being anti-imperialist, what does that mean for me? But like also like, but also it's like if it's a role that's going to be elevated, I better be doing what feels authentic to me, right? I better be doing what's authentic to my community, and like whatever my services are that I provide in language, linguistics, understanding, insight. Like, I better be bringing that into spaces where real change can happen. So that's what I do as poet laureate.
Yes. And I'm so thrilled to hear you say that, because my thought, and I don't want to start any trouble. I know that you're I know, I don't want to get you started, but I felt like when a person becomes a poet laureate, it's like an appointment, and I don't want to talk down to anybody, but for those who don't know, like it's about it's you're working with the city government in effect.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wondered if that would ever stifle or interfere with messages that I want to communicate. Because I'll be honest, I've been very fortunate in that I get commissioned to write poems for different occasions and different organizations, and so those people are my clients. And so when I'm writing for a gig like that, while I don't compromise anything that I want to communicate, I still have a client, right? I still have. So I wondered if have you come up against that at all since you've been in this role of, there's an occasion, or you've been asked to do something, poetically, that you're like, I don't want to water this down, I don't want to sugarcoat it.
That's a really good question. So I think for me, so the short answer is like, not really, right? When I applied for the poet laureate position, I applied with a poem that called out development in Kansas City for erasing Black bodies. So like, you knew what poet you were getting.
Right.
Punches. But also, I think the thing is, it's like, it definitely like I am in spaces where like, for instance, I was invited to do like some sort of event for hosted by the city for like a program they have in it, and the name is escaping my mind, but a lot of like organizations have been funded through it, and it's like, about art in our city, but also like public works in our city. And in the email it said something about the World Cup and like preparing for the World Cup. And like, I know I'm about to make a bunch of Kansas Cityans probably angry with what I'm about to say, but I don't care about no World Cup, because like like usually when things are being prepared in that way for things like that, like a lot of people get disappeared, homeless folks get like shipped to other places, not taken care of. We are not really dealing with the real issues. Like they talked about employment, but it's like very short-term employment. Like it's not sustainable, often proven not sustainable for our economy, our local economy. And like, and so when she said something like that, and I, being the organizer I am, I'm like, well, what about XYZ, all of these things, right?
Right.
But then I went to the event and I was sitting at the table with someone from like I forgot. See how I wish my memory was like better, but someone who works with an organization that works with children with mental health issues,
Okay.
right? And they had been funded by this project. And then I look around and I'm like, oh, all of the people in here are doing community work. And I'm
Yeah.
about to go on this stage and yell at them. and so, and so, as if they're not, right? So,
Right.
and so I had to quickly on the spot, like, change up some of my language. Like, I know we're doing our best, but we should all, like, you know, think about, like, you know.
Yeah.
And I even, and when I went on stage, I straight up said, like, I know we're all in here doing this work of like tending to our community, and I want to commend us for everything we do, especially because so often it's a thankless job or something like that. And I think if we're really tending to our community, we must never turn away from those we have failed, right?
Yeah.
We must never like stop counting our losses, because a loss is a life, and we always have to consider who we're leaving behind and how we can go back for them, right? And so I framed it in that way so that it wouldn't sound like I was yelling at them.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but short answer, I don't pull punches. They always know what they're gonna get. Has that lost me an opportunity or two, or got me disinvited from a place? Or I'm not going to call out any names, but yes, it has. And and at the same time, I'm not stopping. I won't stop, because I said a thing to very much to your point of like working with the government and like being the specific like appointed thing or position. Someone, I'm not going once again to call names, but they said that their job as poet laureate was to make sure the position stayed for the next person. And this was in response to like a audience member asking like, hey, what is the job as the poet laureate to get the truth out as we're dealing with like political turmoil and stuff? And they were basically saying, oh, I don't get too political, right?
Yeah.
And the specific situation I was in, it was not about me, but I raised my hand and asked permission from the audience to give my response. And I was like, I'm sorry, but to me, and straight up as a Black poet, like my job is to tell the truth, right? I don't do poetry for fun, for the fun of words, which is part of it, but like that's not what I do poetry for. I'm doing poetry because I'm trying to communicate something to people, and trying to like help people in like very real ways. And if I'm not telling the truth, then I'm not doing my job. And if there's a title called the poet laureate and it can't handle the truth, maybe it shouldn't exist in the first place. And so like, and that's just how I feel. Amiri Baraka, I don't know if you know that story of Amiri Baraka, but like,
I mean, he told the governor of New Jersey, like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's everybody's homework. Look up Amiri Baraka as poet laureate of New Jersey and see what happened there. But yeah, so I appreciate that. And I'm glad that you've been able, to speak the truth and not feel that anyone's tried to compromise you in any way. I did want to go back to, just so that folks know and to give you your flowers, like to be on a panel with poets laureate of various cities, states, or however that panel was comprised, and representing Kansas City in that way is no small thing. AWP, that conference, the Association of Writers and Publishers, is the largest literary conference in the United States. So that's a big deal. And getting your proposal and all those things accepted is cool. Yeah.
I just have to clarify. I could take this, but I'm not going to. I was not on the panel.
I got you. Okay.
Laureate. I was like gleaning information from poet laureates. I did have a reading at AWP, a very
Yeah,
big.
so okay. Well,
So they're
let's
flying for the right reason.
right, right.
I got to teach some students at AWP. It was really cool, but I was not on that
I
panel.
thought I saw something because I was thinking about going this year, and I
Mhm.
thought I saw, man, maybe that was your performance. Did you perform with
I
other?
I performed with there were 3 journals that got together, Pleiades, Adroit, and
Yeah.
Executive.
Okay, that must
We
be
had a
it.
really big
Gotcha.
performance, amazing,
Yeah.
amazing poets on that lineup. I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, me on this thing?" It really was one of
Exactly.
those situations.
Yeah. So I
Uh,
got the context wrong, but still, you represented for the home
yeah,
team, and
yeah,
we appreciate
yeah,
that. We appreciate that.
yeah.
So, and you talk about, you had mentioned briefly, but tell me a little bit more about A Nation in Exile and the work that you're doing with that
Yeah.
organization.
So, A Nation in Exile is an abolitionist event, arts and organizing event series that I started. It's been a couple years now that it's been running. It's like we do about 2 events a year. Um, but we partner with local community building, social justice organizations in order to put on events around culture or conceptual themes. And it's like based on this whole concept of like we're a nation of exiles in exile from each other, in exile from ourselves, and
Hmm.
exile from the land, our cultures. We're exiled from so much of what it means to be human. And like what does returning home look like after such violences have been wrought in our lives and lineages that keep us from knowing who we truly are, right? And how do we figure out who we truly are? How do we return home, right? And so, and the secret sauce or the secret behind it is like, I secretly believe we are the ones who we are waiting for, that like by witnessing artists who are telling their stories in real and impactful ways, as well as communicating with each other, we are already starting that work of like healing our state of exile through vulnerability, through intimacy, and through making ourselves available to one another. But then there's this added thing of like organizers are actually creating the conditions on the outside to like make space for what must come, right? For this to really be our home in a physical, tangible way, and getting connected with like local organizations that are in our local Kansas City community, that are fighting for various reasons and doing amazing things, right? Is a way to actively stay committed to the work of returning home, and not allow yourself to get distracted by the trappings of capitalism, by the trappings of things that alienate us from ourselves and each other, and remembering who we are and how we can in fact provide for ourselves, and how we have the power in us to get things done. Because I think very often, especially in times like these, so many people are feeling so powerless, they're like, what can we do? What is there to be done? And like, to be straight up with you, there are things to do on many a level, but you can start right where you're at, right? You can get to know your neighbors. That's a powerful thing when you consider most people don't even know their
Right.
neighbors, which is wild, right?
Yeah.
Most people walk around in Kansas City afraid of what's going to happen to them. And that is actually an insane, and I'm using insanity because it takes one to know one. I get to say what insane is because the doctors try to tell me I'm insane every day. But like, but like, but it is insane as an unhealthy, right?
Right.
Us as a human race, as humanity, to walk around in constant fear for our lives from those who are us, which are other humans, right? And that's because we live in exile, truly, truly. And
Yeah.
not everyone on this earth lives like that, but we do.
So I would say probably around 2020, I started to notice the re-emergence of the word abolitionist.
Mhm,
So tell me, what does it mean to be an abolitionist
mhm.
in a contemporary context?
Okay, that's a really good question. So for a non-contemporary context, for anyone who needs the context,
Mhm.
abolitionists were people who wanted to abolish slavery, right? Um, abolish means to do away with. So in 2020, it starts to reemerge when you start hearing things like defund the police, right? And it's actually built on the history that incarceration is another form of slavery, if you don't know that. Straight up, when slavery was abolished in the United States, they made it a line in the Constitution that it's abolished unless you're incarcerated, then it's not abolished, right? So literally, the way that slavery still lives on our lands, along with many other ways, incarceration is one of the main ways by the constitutional by the Constitution. So slavery is still in existence, and abolition is about abolishing slavery at its root, right? But to be real, and like this, hopefully this is not too esoteric for listeners, but like abolition is about abolishing anything that's carceral, right? Anything that locks us in a box and tells us who we're supposed to be and limits us in the ways that God created us to be, right? To me, abolition is love, right? So so when we talk about and also a lot of people get scared when they hear abolition because they're like, what's going to replace abolition? Like, if you want to destroy these institutions, if you want to destroy the way things are now, what's going to replace it? Abolition says we build it, right? Like if abolition says, and I'm a Christian, or I come from a Christian background, I love me some Jesus, and so this idea of like the stone that the builder rejected shall become the head cornerstone, right? In organizing, we say the people closest to the problems are closest to the solutions, right? Like because we have been deprived of what we need, we know the shape of it. We know what it tastes like. We've been dreaming of it our whole lives, right? So now it is upon us to build it. The only reason whatever exists now exists today is because someone wrote it into existence and other people followed along with it. So why can't we do the same and do something that is actually truly for all of us? And that's what abolition is about. It's saying we know what's better. We know what love looks like, and we want to just love in real ways and meet the needs of our community.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. And then something that you said earlier, I just want to reinforce is that, you know, there is a lot of excitement around Kansas City, you know, being one of the host cities for the World Cup, you know, but I do hope, and we've seen it happen. We saw it happen in Atlanta and LA when, you know, each of those cities got the Olympics, you know, how the least of us were treated and mistreated and disappeared and all those things. And I just hope that stays at the forefront of the conversation. So I appreciate you putting that out there. I did want to talk a little bit about writing, since that's what you do. When I was in the MFA program, I returned as a non-traditional student. So I was, in my late 30s when I started to work on my MFA. And it took me forever. I was like in school a semester and then life was getting in the way. And long story short, though, this ain't about me. I haven't really kind of built what reputation I have like doing spoken word. There was a shift that was necessary for me to be successful in the MFA program. Now, to me, it's all the like I think there's like a false dichotomy between what's considered to be, you know, literary poetry for publication versus spoken word. But I did have a professor who really had an issue with not only, you know, my aesthetic coming from a spoken word background, but also me wanting to talk about the things that we've been talking about, like what it means to be a Black person in this country, racism, social justice, all those things. She was like, you want to talk about that stuff, write a speech. You know what I mean? This is poetry. So anyway, what was your experience like? And do you see, like, when you're writing and you're thinking about like a spoken word piece versus a poem that you know, hope might get published in a literary journal like Pleiades, like you had mentioned, like, how do you keep your feet in both of those worlds or whatever?
Okay, so when I first started out, I've been writing poetry since I was 12, and I did grow up doing spoken word since I was 14. And I did get my undergrad in creative writing, and that was traumatic because it's a white supremacist elitist institution in which, like, you know, there's a standard P for poetry and what that looks like, capital P or whatever. And I remember like professors being like, what are you going to do when there are no angels? Like, because I love writing about spirituality, and that wasn't allowed in poetry, which, by the way, wrong, right? Because there's history, like,
absolutely,
and, like all this, like, you know, Mary Oliver. But but it's like this thing of like the supremacist elitist capitalist like idea of what a poem is, right? I though got very very fortunate, right? Because yeah, I went through the whole like schizophrenic like, and I when I just want to make the like I do want to make the I want to say that I use words that refer to mental illness because I study these words to their core because I have been diagnosed with most of them, and so like and so I use them, and the way I maintain my sanity is understanding their nature, so that when I say something is schizophrenic, schizophrenia means split mind, and it's this idea of splitting yourself in two, right? And that is how we're forced to live in a lot of institutions in this world. Anyway, but like this like, oh, am I a page poet? Am I a stage poet? Am I a page poet? Am I a stage poet? Right? And I recently I just got my MFA at Randolph College, which is a low res program. The standardization of a low res model is like the first 10 days of the semester you go in person and have this like really intense 10-day residency with like lectures, workshops, like all of these amazing things. It's a very close knit community. It's amazing. Then you go back to wherever you live in the United States or maybe abroad, and you have a one-on-one mentorship, right? That's the like gist of it, with your mentor or your professor or whatever. But what made my school special was actually not the structure of it, but the culture of it. So my school is like in there, like what we do. They're like, we're anti-elitist, anti-supremacist. We decentralize whiteness, right?
Wow.
It's they practice rigorous community over competition, right? Because that's the other thing about a lot of like these institutions, like they want you to compete against one another. And at Randolph, we're like, no, we're actually all in conversation and instead of competition, and we're in community, right? And we celebrate one another when we see when you win, I'm winning because you're winning, right? Like, and so this shifting of the culture, right? And mind you, usually you go to an MFA program because you want to work with one person, right? And then everyone else, let's be real, feels like a consolation prize. But at my MFA program, literally every single person who is a mentor there is a baddie, right? Like a literary baddie. Like we're talking New York Times bestsellers. We're talking like just like really big writers in the writing community, like for American letters, and they teach at this low res program because they believe in it, right? And they're all very generous, amazing, talented humans. And so then you end up being like in that 10-day thing is like a thing of, it's a time warp bubble of genius and love and tending, right? And also rigor, right? Also literary rigor, right? And there is not that splitting of like, am I a stage poet? Am I a page poet? It's like, no, you are the standard, you are the canon, and we being our mentors, are people who are looking at you saying, where are you trying to go? Let's help you get there, right? It's not about what are you, right? It's like, no, I see you. Let me help mature you, right? So like, and that really helped with my little like stage poet, page poet, stage poet, page poet thing, because it helped me to accept, no, I read poems, I perform poems, and I love that. And also, it's part of my DNA because, excuse me, I come from a line of griots. I come from a line of storytellers. That whole thing of like, oh, what your professor said to you. If you want to speak about these things, say it in a speech or something.
Right.
Excuse you, that is not our people, right? Like, like our people have always crafted stories, have always crafted poetry and like lyric and song and dance to teach, right? We have always done that. And so for people to be like, you can't be didactic in poems, you can't teach in poems, it's strictly anti-Black, right? So like, so in learning and going to my MFA program is the space where I had to unpack all of these things of like the ways the institution of poetry was anti-Black, anti, and when we say anti-Black, we're saying like, oh no, this is our culture, this is what we do, and everything that we do, you're saying is wrong, right? By the standard, right? So, and that may be wrong for someone else, right? but if you're telling me that's the standard and I have to uphold it, then you're also telling me to abandon myself for your culture, and I'm not doing that, right?
Yeah.
So so I've rectified that because of this program that I was in, which was amazing. And then and it's Randolph College for anyone who's listening and like, oh, I'm really Randolph College, go look it up, they're amazing. Anyway, so there's a free, and they get free promo from me every day because
Yeah.
they're the vanguard of MFA programs. Anyway, but nowadays I think in my writing, I think I'm always gonna be the spoken word poet where like as I'm writing a new poem, I'm like performing it out loud and like and hearing how it sounds and stuff like that. But then I'll go back a few times over it a few times and like start adding those page craft elements.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone I look toward for this is Dinez Smith, actually, because
Mhm.
Dinez will be the first one to be like, and which by the way, Dinez teaches at Randolph, and
Wow.
Dinez will be like, I know my poems look good on the page, right? And like, and Dinez, for anyone who doesn't know Dinez Smith, Dinez is like a superstar poet, and like and grew up doing spoken word, but they're freaking right. Their poems look so good on the page as well.
Yes.
And it's like just pushing yourself a little. There's no reason you can't have it all, right? And I think just knowing that is real.
They have. I've known about them. I used to. I was the artistic director for Louder Than a Bomb KC, and we
Mhm.
would take whatever high school team won here in Kansas City to Brave New Voices, and that's where I met Dinez. And just recently ran into them at Furious Flower, the Furious Flower Poetry Conference, which was
How
awesome.
mad I am about that. You know?
But you and I should work together to bring Dinez here.
Oh
I
yeah.
told them I wanted to, so hopefully we can figure out how to make that happen.
Oh, I
But
got something. I have something, anything, a nation. We will talk.
yeah, I would love to work with you on that.
Yeah.
So, you have mentioned a few times things that I just want you to unpack a little bit more as it pertains to your mental health.
Yeah.
Tell me, just so everybody understands, because you're obviously to me like every interaction I've had with you has been very sane and rational and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
uplifting. But I know you've had struggles. So if you wouldn't mind, it might help somebody out to hear what you've experienced.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So like the materiality of it, right, is like in 2014, the beginning of 2014, I had my first psychotic break, and that was 10 years ago or over 10 years ago. And since then I've had over 10 psychotic breaks. And bouts of psychosis, some lasting a few weeks, some lasting a few months. And it wasn't until I actually came to Kansas City through a through an ambulance by ambulance to research psych, and it wasn't till I came to Kansas City to research psych that I got my first diagnosis, and the first thing I was diagnosed with was schizophrenia. And the the thing about it for me is though, like when I received that diagnosis, I didn't see it as like an identifier, right? I saw it as like, oh, here's the name of the challenge you're facing, not who you are, right? And it was like liberating for me when they handed me a pamphlet and they were like, check these boxes, and if you check these boxes because these are the symptoms of schizophrenia, you might have schizophrenia. And it's like, and I was able to check every box at the time, and like every single one, and it freed me, not because it told me who I, once again I have to like, because I still to this day think this is like a huge part of why when you see me and talk to me you're like, you're a very rational human, and I'm like, yes, and sometimes I hear voices, but like but you'll never know anyway. So but, but no, but it's like I saw this thing and it freed me because I knew the name of my demon, right? I knew the name of the thing I was facing, knowing that I was not the thing, but the thing was with me, right? And so like, and since then, right, I have, I do the work, I go to therapy. I take meds sometimes. I say sometimes because me and my psychiatrist, anyway. But ultimately, it's a thing that, like, to be real, by the grace of God, I appear sane before you, right? I more than a therapist, more than medication, it is my relationship to the divine that keeps me sane and firmly grounded. And and yeah, I can say so much, and I don't, and it could go so many places. But I think one of the things that's important, perhaps in this moment, is that I do truly believe, though, that mental illness, right, especially now because mental illness is actually on the rise, um, is like, it needs to be said that it is a product of our environment, right? It needs to be said that, like, it doesn't just come from nowhere, right? But it's actually a product of the lives that we are living and forced to live and coerced into living, right? It is a product of self-abandonment, self-splitting, right? It's even James Baldwin who was like, asked at a panel discussion he was on about, like, the rates of, like, African American people at the time, like black folks, and their decision to not go to school, and how do we increase the rates of, or the attendance of black folks into the institutions of higher education. And he said, you got to understand, like, for a black man to go to college is for him to risk schizophrenia. He says that straight up, right? Because of the ways we're demanded of splitting ourselves, right? So, like, and I'm working on this in my writing. Like, literally, go check with me in a couple years because I'm working on some things. But, like, uh, every illness that we are facing, right? That is mental, psychological, and psyche means soul, right? So it is a soul sickness, right? Um, is induced and supported and bred by the institutions and the society that we live in. And if you want any receipts, I can give them.
Yeah.
One of my books.
Well,
Yeah.
wow, W.B. Du Bois called it the dual consciousness, right? Like,
Yes.
having to, so that when you talk about schizophrenia, like, it's still a very real thing. Like, I know we've moved away from, like, respectability politics and things like that, but there's still this subtext, even if you are liberated, and a conscious, woke in the positive sense person, we're still sent messages that say that you have to behave one way in, a space where, there's white folks or whatever, and then there's another way you behave and act when you're around folks that look like you. And it does, and one, I've never done it for 24 hours, but a social experiment I've been considering is to be cognizant and to take note of every racist message I receive in a day. And it's pretty constant.
Yeah.
So the whole dual consciousness, um, kind of coupled with these negative messages that were being sent all the time about us being less than and what's our problem and all those things. Yeah, I could see how that would be a great catalyst for not being mentally well.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, like add that to being a people pleaser with a big heart and an empathetic mind. Like what actually ends up happening is you will, like, destroy your own temple, your
Yeah.
own psyche, your own self in order to please the person in front of you.
Yeah.
And so, and that was, like, my case, to be very real. And so, like, I think, yeah. And so, just for the sake of, like, whoever's out there who may be resonating and want to know more or something like that, like, all of my diagnoses have gone from, like, schizophrenia to bipolar to now, like, schizoaffective spectrum, because they're like, you're on a spectrum, because we actually don't know, which is great, right? We love when, I personally love when the institution's like, we don't know what you are, because I'm like, good, let's keep it like that, so I can figure it out for my damn self and do what I need to do. But I do think it is both a blessing and a curse type of situation, right? Because I want to name, an alternative perspective that I have and hold, is that I'm also, like, part of the reason I'm sensitive to schizophrenia is because I have specific sensibilities as well, that are strengths. If I was raised in the culture that understood them to be strengths, right?
Mm,
Like there are stories of like people who are historically like medicine men or like traditionalists, who are naturalists who like see the symptoms that we face, and they're like, actually in our culture we would treat this completely differently because it's not an illness, right? It's actually a
mm,
gift. So I think, and now I know like part of my radicalization is like, oh, I have been through so many instances where reality stopped being real, that like you can't convince me of any of what's possible or impossible. I know anything's possible, baby, and you can't stop me. So
yeah, I love your sense of humor. And like you're saying things that I'm like, should I be laughing? But it's hilarious. But it's hilarious.
I
So
count it all joy. I count it all joy.
I
Yeah.
know that's right. So how has that informed your writing? I know with, anecdotally, I'm certainly, I've not done the research, but I do know that art has this power to heal. And I
Yes.
know, just in my work in the community with folks who have experienced homelessness, folks who are incarcerated, um, youth in the urban core, I see how poetry um, gives them a way to grapple with the things that they're going through, or to suspend reality for a while and just be creative and just to have fun with it. So how has poetry helped you in the things that you've experienced that you just discussed?
Yeah, so it helps me unpack it, right? It helps me. I'm not an escapist per se. I don't believe in like running away from my problems. I'm like, I will face this demon head on. Let's go. I poetry is the vehicle which I work through these things. Poetry is also the vehicle in which I like, part of the reason they have such a stronghold on so many people is like they feel like they have to hide it, right? The stigma around mental illness serves mental illness. And making us more mentally ill because we always feel in the shadows and paranoid, literal paranoia, about people finding out about our condition and judging us for it, right? Which shows once again the illness that we actually live under. But for I'm so open about it, and I work through it in my poems and on stages because it's part of what frees me, right? It
Yeah.
frees its hold on me, right? It's a literal exorcism, which I wrote my critical essay on for my MFA about how Black women
I
perform exorcisms in their poems. Anyway,
would love to read that.
yeah,
If you don't mind. Yeah, I would love to read that. Yeah.
because the thing that is true, I believe to be true anyway, is words are in fact magic. If you never heard it before, you'll hear it here first, right? The act of communication, the act of repetition, the act of rhyming, but also the act of like speaking the truth and being honest unlocks things in individuals on an unseen realms, but felt, right? So that they can either walk into a trap or walk out of a trap, right? Um, Fact, we have been under propaganda most of our lives. Fact, that propaganda is a repetitive notion, right? That creates worlds and stories in our minds so that when we see a person, we are judging them based off of the propaganda rather than meeting the person as they are, right? The stories, these are called stereotypes, these are called, whatever. But that's all magic, right? It's all in our brains. And people will be like, it's just in your mind. It's no big deal. That is your CPU, your central operating unit. Your mind is everything. That's where you live from. Anyway, it's wild. The cognitive dissonance is wild for me. So yeah, in my poems are doing the work of one, unlocking my own mind to what's possible and to love and all of these things like that. But let's be real. I will tell you straight up that whenever I get on a stage, I do not stop praying until I am off that stage. And even then, I continue praying, because what I'm hoping and praying for is that whoever is encountering my words is meeting something in themselves that they desperately need to meet in order to free themselves. Right. So, and I can only do that by doing it myself first.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's incredible. So I always tell students or folks in my workshops, in order to write good poetry, you have to read good poetry. You have to be a student of the craft. So I know this is a question you probably get asked all the time, but who are some of your influences, and who are you currently reading? I know we talked about Dinez and Tango, but
Yeah.
are there others? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always going to first attribute every Black woman to ever do the thing. I'm always going to attribute, like, literally, like, Maya Angelou is the reason I started writing poetry. But then I, along the way, uncovered Nikki Giovanni, June Jordan, Audre Lorde, Toni Cade Bambara, like all of these amazing Black female and femme writers who uh, reflected back to me that I was not alone, that I continued to be not alone, that the way I live my life and the things that I experienced, Tanya Sanchez, like, oh, my God, right? So, like, all of these of just Black women doing the thing. If you're a Black woman, go do the thing. Whatever thing it is you need to do, please do it so I can be inspired. Anyway, but, but then outside of Black women, I think, let's see, I think we've got Ilya Kaminsky, who's got amazing use of language, right? Like, his words be daggers. Um, and then we've got, like, Kaveh Akbar, whose personage is just inspirational, right? His poetry is inspirational, but his person, who he is as a person, inspires me every day. We've got, let's see, who, and then I'm also thinking about, and right now I'm reading Christina Sharp, Ordinary Notes.
Yeah.
She actually wrote In the Wake, and that is really eliciting a lot of work out of me right now, actually a lot of thoughts, a lot of writing out of me right now. If you haven't read Ordinary Notes, it's amazing. It's consumable. I mean,
Okay.
it's good, but
Writing it down now.
yeah, yeah. It's about Blackness, and it's also about the museum culture, and pedestalizing pain, Black pain. It's really good.
Wow. Yeah, I got to check that out.
And then Philip B. Williams. If you haven't read Philip B. Williams, he wrote Mutiny. He wrote Thief in the Interior. Those are his.
You know, like, I don't name drop a lot, but I just get excited when you're talking about poets. So, I was in a workshop with Philip B. Williams back
Mhm.
in, like, gosh, that had to have been like 2009,
Yeah.
and everybody was just like, why don't you just go ahead and teach? You know what I mean? Like,
He was
and
a
he wasn't coming across like that, but I mean, his poems, yeah, he was just, it was like, it was magic. Yeah, he's an incredible writer. Yeah, and so from knowing him then to seeing how, he's being celebrated now, it's really fun to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's actually, well, can I just say one thing about
yeah,
Philip?
sure.
It's actually, yes, Mutiny. I call it my rage Bible. It's amazing. But he recently, I don't know if you've seen, like, ours, his
Mhm,
novel,
mhm,
uh
mhm.
does things for my Blackness and my ancestors, my connection to my ancestors, that I've never seen done in a book, or experienced in a book.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, that is
Wow.
one of my big influences these days. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. So what about hip hop? So I'm a huge fan of hip hop, and I truly believe that there's the kinship,
Yes. Yes.
so who are some of your favorite MCs?
Okay, so first of all, we got the queen, the
Yep.
one, the reign supreme. I don't believe in imperialism or capitalism or supremacy, but if I did, it would be Lauren Hill.
Okay.
Lauren Hill will forever be
Right,
the
right,
queen.
right.
Love Lauren Hill. Love No Name.
Hmm.
There's this. I think she's like Nigerian, Australian. I don't want to mess it up, but she's like African and Australian. I'm pretty sure. Named Sampa the Great, that I really love.
Hmm.
Also, recently, someone who recently came onto my radar, who I am messing with so hard. Doechii.
Yep, same here.
Doechii is woohoo!
That's
And
an artist.
Doechii Kendrick, like I
Yeah.
woohoo. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then there's Tobe Nwigwe,
Hmm.
who is an amazing rapper as well. Who else? Who else am I like really listening to? So my like in my personal history, my favorite band has been a hip hop band since like high school, and it's Flowbots. They are actually like a really big part of like my um understanding of things. Yeah, Flowbots will always give them a shout out.
Is it like Flowbots like robots? Or
Like yeah, Flowbots like robots.
okay.
Yeah, 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 yes,
I'm taking notes.
yes, yeah,
So this conversation has been so enlightening. I've learned so much. I really have enjoyed this discussion. We have time for another piece, if
yeah.
you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, so the piece that I decided to share today to end is actually about mental health. So there we go. You asked, what is it that I like? How do I work through these things in my poems, or how do my poems help, or these kinds of things? And this is a poem I wrote in a workshop called Emotional Historians Workshop that's run by the poet John Sands, which you should look up. If it's a really great curriculum and like group of folks, and it's online, so you can, even though it's
Mhm.
based out of New York, whatever. I'm a low key promote anything that works for me. So,
Right, right.
but I wrote this in their workshop, and it's about making peace with my brain. It's called Ode to My Cracked Cranium. Oh, constipated cloud. Oh, lightning frenzied lamb. Oh, cracked earth, sputtering lip, catapult to conclusion. Oh, delusion machine. Oh, paranoid preacher. Oh, student teacher humble pride. Oh, hedron collider. Oh, vacuumer of vacuum, space taker, space filler, space sucker upper. Oh, what about me machine? All about me, principled particle. Oh, multiplicitous mote of matter. Oh, you with the fancy frenetic footwork. How sudden you can open to let it all in. You are not the heart, but you try to abandon your part to grasp it all. This life you love to behold in your electrifying embrace. Oh, you who resist second place. You slice and dice machine. You cast die. You oft torpid stone, rigid water, locked log, word mincer. I hear you weep. You weep, and everything crashes. Rage, and everything splits. Why don't we work together to fashion some sort of velvet that knows what it takes to live?
That's amazing.
Mm.
And I love the way that you were able to take this kind of old form and put it in such a contemporary context. There was some humor in there too.
Yeah, I
I
got
like that you don't take yourself too seriously. You can still see the humor in all these experiences. So before we sign off, and I
you.
mean this, I was really looking forward to this conversation, and it has exceeded my expectations. I've been taking vigorous notes.
Oh,
You've given me homework, poems to look up, people to look up. Um, but what advice would you give the emerging poet or someone who's interested in really pursuing poetry seriously?
yeah. Hmm. I think we need you. Like if you think you are not meant to do something, but it's in you, it makes you come alive, do it anyway. Because we need people who have come alive. Someone said that once. I don't remember.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and you being your honest, authentic self is what we need in a world of people not doing that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, help us. If you helping yourself helps us all to be us. So that's it. That's all I got.
So true. No,
Yeah.
that's enough. That's enough. Thank you so much, Melissa. Anything you want to? This is going to live on, but for those who might be listening today, just anything you want to say about stuff you have going on or anything like that before we sign off.
I wish I would have thought about that. I never think about my schedule like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure I have things going on. You know what you should do? You should follow me on Instagram.
How about that?
Yes. Melissa Ferrer, and you see Melissa and and then AND, like and on Instagram. Follow me, and you can stay up to date as I start to remember what's coming up.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will be in touch soon.
For sure.
All right, bye bye.
Bye.